Hi, Jumbos. I'm Shane Woolley.
And I'm Sid Davakaruni.
The TUTV team is now here today with Dean of Admissions Lee Coffin to discuss the powerhouse of an admissions team that he's built here in his 13 years on campus before he goes off to the wilderness of New Hampshire in the fall.
Dean Coffin has worked with Tufts Admissions since 2003 and has overseen a marked increase in selectivity at the university. He is a self-described green thumb, wordsmith, and puppy whisperer. This is not his first TUTV appearance, as his past filmography includes Jules and Monty and Wage Up, so we know he's ready. Dean, thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
We're going to start off with some rapid-fire questions.
Okay.
But before we do, if you sound like you wanted to explain your scruff.
My lumberjack look.
Lumberjack look.
Yeah. Well, it's March, and it's a Saturday, and we are locked in the conclave of the admission committee. So this is what we look like on the inside of the admission process while we're actually making decisions. So no suits.
Well, your scruff looks much better than my scruff.
My scruff is increasingly white. So I call it my Santa scruff at this point. So it's
nice and jolly.
Yeah, nice and jolly, exactly.
Nice. Well, we'll start off some rapid fire questions.
Sure.
Get the mood going. All right. What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the word quirky?
I just frowned.
Is that a good sign for the?
I think quirky means different things to different people. I think as it relates to a characterization of Tufts, I think what people are saying is this is a campus that has unexpected combinations of personality traits. That's positive.
Nice.
I think there are some people of the parent age when they hear the word quirky and it means weird, and I don't think that's what people are suggesting when they say there's a quirkiness here.
Nice.
So what is your dream vacation?
My dream vacation, my typical vacation is I do a lot of cycling. Mm-hmm. So every couple of years I will do a bike trek somewhere. So the last one was in California wine country for a week, which was really fun. And if you're ever curious if a wine tasting at 10 in the morning interferes with toothpaste in the same way as orange juice does, the answer is it does not, which I was surprised by. A couple of years ago I went to Croatia, done them in Italy a couple of times. So that's my preferred vacation.
All right. Have you ever painted the cannon? And if you have not, how would you?
I have never painted the cannon, although I might before I leave campus. Yeah.
Keep an eye out.
Yeah, keep an eye out.
So, as we said before, you are a puppy whisperer.
I am a puppy whisperer.
So, what kind of puppies would you like to whisper to the most?
My own puppy is what started the whispering. So, when Logan and I first met 4.5 years ago, I had never had a dog before. And what was surprising to me was the way the dog and I bonded very, very quickly, and I soon realized dogs in general liked me. So I hadn't really been paying attention to the little guys, but once I had one, I found I had a Dr. Dolittle quality where I'd be walking down the street and a dog would go by and the dog would be like, hey. And so I discovered a skill I didn't know I had.
Does it work for cats?
It does not work for cats. I'm allergic to cats. Oh. So Kibbies and I tend to be a little bit more ambivalent about each other, but on the dog side, I like them and they like me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Dwick or Carm? Dwick or Carm?
Oh.
Yeah. The big question.
Yeah, that is a bit. I think Carmichael.
Wow. This is going to be a game changer for the Tufts community.
Yeah. Well, in part because I'm uphill.
True.
So on the days when I do go to one of the dining halls, it's a shorter walk for me to get to Carmichael. And I like the coziness of Carmichael. It feels very old college in a way that DeWitt feels a bit more like a food court at a mall. Which it kind of is.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing, but I think I personally gravitate a little bit more towards the coziness of Carmichael. Food's the same. Yeah. No?
Depends on who you ask.
Okay.
For sure.
So, Medford or Somerville?
Ooh, pass.
Oh. Do you, okay,
I'm
best thing about
I have to be
Medford, best thing about
agnostic.
Somerville. Best thing about Medford, best thing about Somerville.
Well, there's such different places. I think Somerville, and Davis Square in particular, has the hip factor going in a way that Medford doesn't quite have that same kind of buzz. I think the T probably makes it, but Medford's a lovely place.
Nice. What song is your guilty pleasure?
My guilty pleasure, well, my current song, so this is sort of embarrassing to have to admit this in a recorded way. I catch myself humming Sorry by Justin Bieber more than I would like to acknowledge that I do. And I will out Professor Fio Amanetto on this one too. He was in a engineering staff meeting the other day, and he's like, I can't get this Bieber song out of my head. And the same thing happened to me, where I was driving to work one day and listening to Kiss 108, and it came on, and I caught my hand reached out, and I actually turned it up, and I thought, oh my God, when did I become a middle school kid? Like I just turned up Justin Bieber. So that would be, for people who know me, that's a shocking.
Yeah. Bieber fever.
You caught it.
Yeah, you caught it.
So bow ties or fun socks?
Oh, I can only have one?
Yes.
Well, so I have a sock rule. My sock rule is I don't wear them after Memorial Day.
At all?
No, so even with a suit.
Wow.
So at matriculation every year, most students wouldn't notice this, but under my robe and my suit, I'm usually not wearing socks.
Do you go full McCartney, like no shoes?
I wear shoes,
Okay.
but I don't wear socks.
Nice.
So there's more of the year when bow ties are possible. But if I have to pick between the two, my socks are definitely more of a day-to-day part of my wardrobe. Yeah. So you've noticed I have socks that aren't the norm. I mean, today I'm okay, but they're...
It's part of like the Coffin aesthetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I started a trend in Benditson too. Like most of the admission officers have taken up the colorful sock trend.
That's going to be one of your legacies as you
I
go
think
on.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Gluten?
Gluten?
Yeah.
Sure.
Cool.
So, I know you said you haven't shaved in a week,
I
but
have not shaved in a week.
yes. So, appropriately, what is your favorite kind of facial hair?
You mean, so if I understand this correctly, you mean like sideburns versus a goatee versus a mustache?
Yes.
Oh, interesting. So I'm a sideburns guy.
Oh, really?
Today
Nice.
not being evidence of that. Yeah, I'm not into mustaches. And even this degree of scruff is starting to itch, so it'll be gone soon because it's just, I don't have the stamina.
Nice. Clean shaven overall. Right?
Yeah, a day or two, but not a week is a lot.
Nice. All right. Express your nerdy side.
My nerdy side is I like election statistics, and I am a devotee of 538.com. And even when I was a kid, I would gravitate towards polls and election results, sort of a harbinger of becoming, I was a political science minor, but I've always been really fascinated by election results and patterns and upsets like Bernie winning the Michigan primary. Like, how did that happen? So I think the numbers are really interesting, like who's voting for whom and why, and how patterns shift by state. So that's sort of my nerdy side.
Nice.
Yeah.
Ever thought of running for public office?
I did. I once upon a time. Yeah, that was something I had thought about. But I think in the contemporary world, social media has made politics really complicated for candidates, and I don't know that I have the appetite for that anymore.
So, now that we've had a couple of icebreaker questions,
Yes.
we'd like to go further into your background and your time spent here at Tufts. So, You often cite your experience as a first-gen college student at Trinity
Mhm.
as a drive for your sort of passion to give others the same opportunities here. What drove you to apply to a college, and how do you think that your experience as a first-generation college student might have been different than those whose parents had degrees?
So my experience as a high school senior, and you have to remember the early 80s were a really different landscape for college admission than they are today, but even so, when you're a first-gen college applicant, there's the family unit is really not as informed about how the process works as a family where mom and dad went to college, or even older siblings went to college. And so when you're first gen, you're figuring it out on your own, hopefully with some resources in school, but not always. And in my case, I had a sort of my origin story as an admission officer was I went to see my guidance counselor in the fall of my senior year, and he pulled out my transcript and he looked at it and he said, "Oh, you're one of the smart ones. I don't have to worry about you. Go back to class. You'll figure it out." And that was it. I mean, that was college counseling for me. And he gave me an app to the state university, and he said, "Good luck." So for me, it was one of those moments as I got older, and I realized this is probably playing out in high schools all around the country, all around the world, where students who don't have a resource to information, don't have access to, how do I prepare my application? What colleges should I even be looking at? How does financial aid work? It became my initial motivation to be a college admission officer because I thought there was some counseling to do and a story to tell, and as my career continued, my own experience as somebody who did figure it out on my own guides the way I think about the work we do. When I'm reading a file and it's from a student from a background like my own, I will be more apt to read between the lines and to understand what isn't being said because there's nobody to say it. And how do you give a student credit for that when they're from a high school where very few people go to college, or their mom and dad didn't go to college, and their file might be a little less complete in a way, which doesn't mean it's not viable. It just doesn't have the same context. And I think on the financial aid side, all colleges and universities struggle to continue to raise the resources we all need to be able to preserve access. And so when that's the background of the Dean of Admission, when I go into meetings, I'm I'm a very strong advocate for why this resource is needed and why we need to continue to both raise more money and preserve the policies we have so that a college like Tufts can be affordable and accessible to the widest pool of people we can find. So that's how it sort of defines my work. It's in my DNA, and it's one of the things I care most about in my work role.
Thank you.
Your coffee's really good, by the way, too.
French press.
Yeah, French press. Yeah.
Do we have the can to sponsor them? Are they our sponsor?
Do you want some?
I would like a little.
He's gonna
thank
try
you.
his first French press coffee.
It's strong.
Yeah, it's very strong.
Very strong.
So, kind of playing off of your last answer,
Yeah.
what did you personally gain out of a college education?
It changed my life. And I, besides being a history major with a minor in political science, college for me created a life arc that I don't think I would have been on had I not gone to college. And I see that in my siblings and my parents, my cousins, who are successful in their own ways. But college opened doors. It introduced me to people I would never have met. It gives me a way of viewing the world and the way the world continues to change through a prism that, particularly as a history major, I understand the interdisciplinary currents that run through history, and that to me is my enduring lesson. Like it made me an educated person. It made me open to different points of view in a way that I don't know that I would have been without that. I learned how to ask questions and to kind of assess different answers before coming to my own conclusion.
Do you think that that's the value of that education has changed since you went to college? I know Marco Rubio, either that's what we need more plumbers, not more philosophers. Do you think that applies?
I think we need more of everything, and people should be able to pursue careers and jobs and lives that are, you have to have your own aspirations. And so, I look at a couple of my siblings who didn't go to college, and I don't think like I'm in a better place. I'm just in a different place. I think we need people we need nurses, and we need tech people so that when my computer breaks, I don't know what to do with it. There are lots of roles that make a society work. And college, it sounds funny coming out of the Dean of Admissions mouth, but college isn't for everybody. And but for those who have the appetite and the intellect to do an undergraduate degree and then perhaps keep going, it does create a different framework for your career.
Thank you. So, in regards to more of the career aspect of your history, you've worked in admissions for Milton Academy, Connecticut College, I'm just reading, Trinity, Harvard, and after all these schools, what then drew you to Tufts?
So Tufts recruited me, and this is the way the dean's job usually works, is the university or college will hire a firm to find, and Tufts is doing that right now, looking for my successor. And so when I first got the call about Tufts, I had always, being inside NESCAC and a couple of other places, I certainly knew Tufts, and I saw a moment here with former President Bacow had just arrived and was starting to put together a really exciting team. And when I met him, I knew that he and I would make a great partnership. And he said to me, my goal is to create a campus with a higher degree of intellectual engagement in each successive class that we bring in, and that's my charge to you. And I thought, as a dean, that's a really exciting way of thinking about college admissions. It wasn't just get X thousands of people to apply and admit this many of them, but to really think about the kind of community we're building and what goes on in the classrooms was exciting. And I think when you're the dean of a place where that's not your alma mater, you have to have an affinity for the place and its culture and its agenda so that you can represent it authentically. And for me, Tufts has always felt like a really good fit.
So, what exactly does the Dean of Undergraduate Admissions do? What does a day, a month, a year look like in the life of Dean Coffin, and who is your boss?
My boss, that's easy. I'll do the second question first. So I report to the Dean of the School of Arts and Sciences, so Jim Glazer, and the Dean of the School of Engineering, Jim Mincu. So my reporting line reflects my role in each of those schools, helping to fill the student body for the 2 undergraduate programs at Tufts. A day in my life depends on the time of year. So, the broad definition of my role is to lead and define recruitment and selection policies that result in each first year and transfer class. So, now in March, my days are they're long and they're very unshaven. We're at the very end of the selection process. So we've read the files and we're now meeting in committee to shape the class and to figure out, from the 20,223 people who've applied, which combination of students makes up the best class of 20 we can create. So that's a really different task where we're going one by one than in April, when we will have admitted the class and we will be having conversations with that group of students either on campus or online or when they call or email to help them understand why Tufts, why is this an option they should be considering. And as we move into May and June and July, it shifts to more of a planning role where we're starting to map out the fall. So the class is set, and now we turn our attention to the next class. And so my typical days are, series of meetings with different groups within the staff around, where will we travel in the fall, and what resources do we need to go there, and are we going to Africa, are we going to Asia, are we going to Africa and Asia, how many people are going to go to California, which schools in California, and that continues into September, leading up to early decision in the next round, where on any given day the task is different. It's what I like about the job, is it's not a role where Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every week, every month is the same. It's really seasonal. Mm-hmm. And even within the seasons, there's some days where I just go meeting to meeting to meeting, and then there are other days where like today, where I'm just in my office at my computer scrolling through applicants that have been recommended for admission, and I'm reviewing them.
Now, those applicants, it seems to me you almost remind me of like Donald Trump in a good way, in that you're good at building a brand. It feels like you've built a brand
okay.
in the Tufts Undergraduate Admissions office. So could you speak to that, like the conscious decisions that go into that, and who's your audience? Who are you trying to get to apply?
So the audience is always high achieving students in high school. High achieving defined in a very elastic way depending on where they're in school. So the primary audience are seniors in high school, increasingly juniors as they start earlier, and there are some eager sophomores who start to pop up, and we need to be developing a conversation with them. I think our job in admissions right now is to curate a conversation between the campus and students around the world, as well as be the liaison between the campus and the high schools, and so particularly the guidance and college counselors. And so the formal kind of bridge is between the admission office and the guidance office, and that's the two poles that the students follow. So that's the who, and then parents, of course, are part of that. But when we're framing our conversation, we try and aim it to the 17-year-old and really have the conversation with the students who are going to be going through the process a bit more than to their parents. The parents are there, but we're trying to engage students directly. And in terms of the brand, what we're trying to authentically represent this very multifaceted campus, and to show it as a place that's got excellence across the curriculum, and we start with that, whether it's arts and sciences or engineering, and now the SMFA as the third one, to introduce students to a campus that's collaborative more than competitive, where there's academic excellence, but in a way that's collegial and collaborative and playful. And I think that brand comes through pretty clearly, and we hear students saying back to us, what spoke to them about Tufts is it had the academic power of the other places they visited without kind of a pretentiousness or I have to beat you in order for me to win. That didn't seem to be part of our ethos here, and so representing that in a way that lets the next wave of students kind of see in and say, this is a good fit for me, or no, it's not. I really want a different kind of vibe as part of my experience, and that's also part of our job, is to be clear about who we are and let you make the decision, is that what you want?
So now that we spoke a lot about the admissions process and the logistics of it, we'd kind of like to delve more into the thicket of things to more pressing issues. So, speaking of which, in 2009, Tufts suspended its Needblind admissions process. And in your opinion, are there hopes to return to such practices in the future?
That's always the goal. And technically, we didn't suspend Needblind. So the President Backow had been raising resources to make Tufts Needblind. So for 2 cycles in 08 and 09, we were. The policy was never adopted. We just were able to go through the cycle in a Needblind way, and then the recession hit. So that was the, if it's the Roadrunner cartoon, that's where the Roadrunner comes up to the edge, like stop. So the recession paused the implementation of a policy that continues to be a high priority for Tufts. And as the next campaign is developed, it will continue to be the goal.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
On a different note, last semester, actually, there were protests from the We Are the 3% group on campus, all over racial tensions here at Tufts, and that also spoke to issues that were going around on other campuses in the U.S. Why do you think that such discrepancies exist here at Tufts in terms of a low percentage of African American students, and what do you think admissions will do to address it?
Yeah. So it's a really important conversation that I won't say it started last semester because it's ongoing, but it certainly came to a really a higher degree of visibility last fall. And one of the things that we've been talking about intra-admissions is, how do we partner with the Black Student Union in particular in a more direct way? So as we move into April and we release decisions on the class of 2020, we have a plan to do a much more targeted yield outreach, and to see, I think the challenge is always in the month of April, how many people say yes.
Yeah.
So the goal this year will be to convert more of them to a deposit, and to do more targeted outreach.
Okay. Kind of just going off
Yeah.
of that, if in the future we would like to see more diversity on campus, what do you think admissions can do to make Tufts campus, when students visit, a more accepting place of people from all backgrounds?
I don't know if it's admissions. There's some of the, admissions is responsible for recruitment and selection, but in some ways, as representatives of the campus, the campus itself is, whether it's student affairs or the faculty or other parts of the administration, what goes on campus is beyond the admission officer's ability to influence it. So we reflect it, but we're not always the ones that can control what's the storyline on campus. But I think there are a lot of serious conversations going on, particularly in Dowling, but also in Blue, around climate. It kind of connects back to your earlier question around Needblind Admissions and financial aid, and the demand for financial aid never goes away, and the two goals are connected, like access, diversity, academic excellence, all linked. So the more resources we have, that's where the admission process can really be enhanced by the generation of new resources. So as we go out and we recruit, we're able to have conversations with families that are understandably intimidated by what we cost, and to say, no, when we admit you, you will get what you need in terms of aid, and that creates a better opportunity to yield the students we most want.
Okay, thank you. And my last kind of question about the whole admissions process is, okay, so on the undergraduate website, it states, and I quote, "Tufts welcomes all undergraduate applicants regardless of citizenship status. Undocumented and deferred action for childhood arrivals, DACA. Students who apply to Tufts are treated identically to any other U.S. citizen or permanent resident in their high school." End quote. So, if DACA were to be reversed by another president in the future, how would you like admissions to respond?
So that's a big question. Our ability to welcome applicants from all people is in part dependent on President Obama's executive order granting DACA, but we went beyond that and said DACA and undocumented. If a new president were to change the law, Tufts is going to have to respond in kind. So, it's one of those hypothetical, like, well, what's the new law look like? But for the moment, there's nothing stopping a private institution like Tufts from admitting students from whatever background we would like. And I think that, to me, is consistent with our values of active citizenship and egalitarianism. So being able to include students regardless of citizenship status was a really important policy shift that my hope is Tufts will be able to preserve as we go forward. But it's going to be dependent on, this is where elections matter, who wins and what what are the consequences of that new president and her or his agenda.
Also, looking forward a little bit with the admissions process, the SMFA was just recently acquired, as you
Yep.
mentioned earlier. Do you see any change in the admission structure to kind of like outreach towards art students?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the arts have always been part of liberal arts, but now we have a much more overt curriculum that's being developed. The BFA program will be something that's now a part of the undergraduate curriculum. We've always had the dual degree with the SMFA, so we're beginning to lay the groundwork for how do you just, first of all, what is the curriculum? That hasn't been completely defined yet, but once the faculty says, here are the degrees, potential new major in studio art, we'll start talking about it and put spotlights on faculty and students and majors to build the pool just like we would any other new part of Tufts. The parallel would be a couple years ago when film studies was introduced, and we started to highlight it as part of what we do at Tufts, and we already see a really dynamic pool growing of students who've said, yes, I absolutely want to study film, and Tufts curriculum is really exciting. So we'll visit some different schools, particularly arts magnet schools, as we start to travel around the world, and it'll broaden the conversation about the curriculum at Tufts.
Broaden the strokes.
Yeah.
Yeah, to use an art metaphor. So looking forward again, still a little bit, and taking into account your role in your future, you've recently gone through an admissions process yourself in a way.
Yeah.
Why did you choose Dartmouth, and why did Dartmouth choose you, do you think?
So I hope we chose each other for the same reason. I was just like in 03, I got recruited, and as the conversation began, I thought, it's time for me to try something new after 13 years. And I think that's a healthy professional instinct. I think my role personally and for the institution, I think the turnover when it comes kind of restarts the juices a little bit on both sides. So for Dartmouth, I was inspired by a new leadership team that had recently come together there, and some of the appetite they have for reimagining the admission process and their outreach. It felt like time to do again what I did here, which is kind of come in and put together a strategy and lead it. So felt like a good next step after my jumbo years. Yeah.
Are you going to be like utilizing the skills you learned here? Is it going to be a similar kind of like brand that you create there, do you think?
That any effective admission process has to be framed around a really clear conversation about like, who are we? So that will be part of it, to figure out like what's the authentic story there and how do we communicate it. Yeah.
Well, you've clearly left your mark here.
Thank you.
And so what would you say you're most proud of? What's your legacy that you want us to know?
The thing that struck me the most when the announcement was made that I was leaving was how many faculty members reached out and said that during my tenure, the quality of their classroom experience has gone up. That they can see a richer dynamic with all of you in their classrooms, and that's for me the most meaningful thing, because I often say I work for the faculty of the institution. My job is to bring to their classrooms the best students we could find, and so to have them say back, "You made the difference," is for me a really important legacy. And I, as here you all are, I've enjoyed my interactions with Tufts undergrads over the years, and knowing that I had a part in bringing you all together and creating this community it's a meaningful
family, like you say.
Yeah, no, it's you build a community and you have these experiences with each other, and if you go to matriculation every year when I do the welcome, what I'm doing in that speech is giving you some clues about who your peers are. Like, who did we see through the admission process that we want you to be able to poke and peel back and really understand that, people are multifaceted, and there's a reason why each one of you is sitting on that quad, and to start to imagine, what conversations or what partnerships might I have with people who are very similar to me, very different from me, who grew up in really different places, whose ideas I've never been exposed to. I mean, that's why you come to a place like this. So
Some good changes overall the past 10 years.
Yeah.
What about the next 10 years?
For Tufts?
Yeah, what do you think? What do you see happening?
I think Tufts is in a really great spot, and the admissions landscape moves really quickly, and the big unknown in the last couple of years and in the next few is the number of 18-year-olds is not growing nationally. So, continuing to find creative ways to tap into parts of the world and parts of the U.S. that aren't organically wired to send students to northeastern independent colleges and universities. So you think about the Southwest and California, there aren't many private colleges and universities in those states, and those are the fastest growing states in the country. So the opportunity and the challenge is to continue to go west, to go abroad, to go to the South, and to tell the story. We're a D3 place, so our basketball teams are doing really well, but they're not playing on CBS in March Madness, and so D3 doesn't have the same spotlight that D1 creates, and so that is what it is. But it's how do you move into parts of the country where there's not awareness of smaller liberal arts and engineering schools that aren't kind of big state universities or names that people know because they hear it on TV.
Yeah, I can definitely empathize with that because I'm from the Midwest myself, and the only people who knew what Tufts was actually my parents, because they're both physicians and they know about Tufts Med when they first came here in the 80s. But besides that, like, when I told my teachers, they were like, "Is that in New York?"
Yeah,
and I'm like,
it's just the dynamic that the way many people understand higher ed. The places that are smaller are
often
a bit more off the spotlight. Doesn't mean that we're not all high quality, but it's just in the public imagination we're not there quite as organically, and so we have to introduce it and to be.
It almost gives you an advantage.
Yeah.
The opportunity to present it.
Yeah. But what's definitely happening is you see a shift from the New England Mid-Atlantic area, which has historically been the main place for northeastern colleges and universities, and as that population starts to shift, admissions has to shift with it.
Is it California this past year was the second largest state?
California's number 2 most of the recent years, neck and neck with New York for second place, and it's going to continue. I mean, it's just a matter of time for California kind of catches Massachusetts.
Yeah. Wow.
Just where the demographics are going.
I'm coming here for the water.
Yeah,
That's
UC Medford.
Yeah. Nice. Well, do you have any advice for anyone, whoever will come to fill your shoes in the fall?
My successor.
What would you say to them?
This is a really wonderful deanship with a faculty that has been great partners for my team as we tell the story, and I've been really struck over the years by how many professors readily join us for different events that we do, whether it's Jumbo Day or the engineering programs in the fall or just a guidance counselor visit. A wide number of faculty have been part of what we do, and that's not true everywhere. And it gives us a really organic way of talking about the classroom experience and the value of teaching and a research university, and I hope the next dean will continue that, and to whoever it is will bring their own flavor to the position, and that'll be fun to see too. And the way it's similar and the way it changes after I leave.
Nice.
Yeah.
So as we we'll pour one last round of coffee.
Okay.
Here, one last question as well. Do you have any?
I'm worried.
Actually, I don't.
Okay. What will you miss most about Tufts?
Tufts, I have lived here, worked here, been part of Tufts longer than anywhere I've ever worked. I've been in my room in Benditson 201 longer than I lived in my room at my parents' house at this point. So, as I catch myself thinking about, it's wrapping up, that it's going to be very poignant when I get to May and say goodbye. So I'm not looking forward to that. Honestly, I'm not looking forward to it. I know that I joked, and I think the Daily used this line, that I'm the John Boehner of college admissions, where I tear up pretty quickly. So I expect the end to be teary. Mm-hmm. But I also, over my years, have learned that when I do well up, it's because something or someone has been important to me. So, and that's definitely true for Tufts. So, yeah.
Well, we'll certainly miss you
Thank
at
you.
Tufts, and we wish you the very best. So
Thank you,
very
Shane.
much. Appreciate it.
Good luck at Dartmouth.
Thank you.